You are tuning in to Access Live, a show about raising awareness, what's going on in the community, and to address the issues that impact youth and their families that have serious emotional and behavioral challenges. We are located at the Brookins Building at 1776 East Washington in Urbana, Illinois, and at the downtown location at 202 West Park Street.
And good afternoon. You are tuned in to Access Live, a community education and engagement initiative of the Access Initiative. I'm your host, Imani Bazzell, and celebrating once again a beautiful day. It doesn't matter if the sun isn't shining bright. We woke up, right?
Absolutely.
That's one thing. There's still a lot of beauty out there in the world, and at least once a week we want to celebrate that together. We're going to celebrate something else this week, but it might sound like we're doing it in a funny way because we're going to be doing a lot of cutting and slicing too. We're going to celebrate the wondrousness of Black people for the next few weeks in a series, and today we're starting with Black women and girls. So, when I say the wondrousness of Black women and girls, you may wonder, what do we mean? Well, we're actually starting with anger. And it ain't to say we don't have a reason to be angry. It's to say, what do we want to do about the anger we have that might get us closer and closer to what we want? So, with that in mind, I've got my partner in crime with me here in the studio, Miss Karen Crawford Sims. She is the coordinator of wraparound services for the Access Initiative and also responsible for training and technical assistance. Welcome, Miss Sims.
I swear, you always do a mouthful.
I know, I didn't know what I was going to say.
Always do a mouthful. So welcome, thanks for the invite. So hopefully this will be a great, rich conversation, and I hope it's a conversation, so people please chime
Serious.
in.
Listen, y'all know who you are, 359-9227. And before we forget, I had about 3-4 email exchanges earlier in the afternoon reminding folks and being reminded by folks. So, Karen, we'll do it up front. You want to go ahead and give the first shout?
About voting? Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about anger, well, maybe it's important to start off with why we decided to do this, because I think the voting thing actually makes a whole bunch more sense.
That's right. Okay, y'all wait for that. So let me set this up.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay. So certainly it's no surprise that folks know that we supposedly got anger issues.
Supposedly. Not really, right?
Supposedly, but not really. No. So there's this idea of the strong Black woman, the angry Black woman, the emasculating Black woman. And, you know, apparently that's what's made the whole Black community pathological,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the women are matriarchs and don't respect men in a patriarchy. So we've just got crazy families and a crazy
Absolutely.
society. Those damn Black women.
And we started this conversation when we started
Yes,
talking about
we
community
did.
violence. So
That's right.
This summer when we were talking about community violence, you started getting emails and follow-up where people were like, well, why are people so mad? Then we left community violence and talking about that and hit Ferguson.
And then Ferguson
hit, and it feels like Ferguson has, I think, colored the narrative.
Yes.
Which is in a good way.
In a good way.
In a really positive way. So, folks, in terms of healing and doing something really proactive about addressing community violence and healing communities and wellness, voting is one of those things that you can do to assert your power.
The easiest thing you can do.
And one of the most important things, and people, I know Ferguson, and I wrote this to you, always highlights to me the importance of all politics being local.
Yes.
And so don't miss this election, because it's so important, because the decisions that impact our day-to-day, that help keep us free, happen here.
They
and so don't
absolutely
lose
do.
sight of how important it is to come
That's
out.
right.
And so if you want to, you feel the oppression local.
Oh.
So, right. And so if
Mhm.
you, and that, it's the injustices that happen when you're riding down the street and in your classroom and in the grocery store and those kinds of things at your job. Those are
Yes.
local decisions.
Yes.
And so if you want to do something about them, voting is a really important way.
It's in fact the very least. We got a
The-
whole lot more work to do than that,
Absolutely.
but it's the very least. And you know what? Even if you don't think it means anything, if you got what they call the one drop rule,
Absolutely.
if you fall into the category of the one drop rule, you have an obligation. I don't even care how you live your life at this point. I do, but I'm just saying that for a fact. We have the obligation because it's the anger, it's the hatred, it's the domestic terrorism that has been perpetrated against black people to ensure we would never have a voice. We'd never be able to read, to sign our names, to vote on the dotted line. A lot of people cried and died and were injured for life for our right to vote. And so in the name of those people, in the name of our ancestors that line the floor of the North Atlantic Ocean, you have the responsibility to at least get your butt to the polls on November 4th. That's next Tuesday. I ain't telling you who to vote for.
Absolutely.
I believe you got common sense, so we're going to leave it up to you. We can't say on the air who we're voting for, but you must vote. We have a moral and ethical obligation to our people and to the promise of participatory democracy to do at least that one thing. But we got a whole lot more we want you to do too. But first we're going to take a call. Hello, caller.
Hello, Mr. Martin.
Hello there.
How are you?
Good. Are you able to hear the show?
I can hear the show.
Oh, good.
In my office, and we're just doing some stuff here that I think you should know about.
Great.
And Aaron said, you should call Imani and let her know.
Okay, that's my little brother.
That's right. So as you all have mentioned, the things that people should do in their community, including voting, it is so important that people have the facts. My opponent in this race has done everything under the sun that was negative, and we didn't respond. But today, my opponent has really gone as far as sending out a mailer with Representative Jacobson's face on it with hers, assuming that they're together and being endorsed. by
Yeah,
Representative
just the appearance of it makes it look like Naomi is endorsing her. For those of you all who don't know, this is Urbana City Councilwoman Carol Ammons on the line, who you know is running for the 103rd District Congressional seat. And so your opponent in the State House. Okay. And give us your opponent's name.
Her name is Kristen Williams.
Her name is Kristen Williamson, right?
Williamson.
And she's a Republican, and she is in the very last hours of our making up our minds, giving the impression that Naomi Jacobson, who is currently in the position and who has publicly endorsed you, is sending out confusing signals so people should think if you like Naomi, you should vote for her instead of Carol. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what
Okay, so everybody who supports Miss Williamson who's listening, please feel free to call in. I'm not sure the phone's going to ring, but we got to give equal airtime.
I wish they
I know, I want to. Great. I'd love for y'all to call in. Seriously, 359-9227. Give us a call and tell us why you think our listening audience should be voting for Miss Williamson. I'd love to hear it. So,
the interesting thing about this is that, and I want to make sure people know, we're going to respond to this publicly. We've not responded to any of the misleading, the poor videos, the mailers. We've not responded to any of their negative attacks. But in the last hour, you want to further manipulate the public, we have to respond to this.
It's gone too far.
Will be at my office today at 3:30.
Well, say that again.
Representative Jacobson will be at my
Okay.
office today at 3:30.
3:30.
A press conference this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
To address this. I invite you, your listening audience, or any other person who may question anything we're doing to come to my office, 407 East University Avenue, and listen to this press conference and listen to what we are presenting as to why this is the most unethical and furthest thing that you can do from providing the truth to the voters coming this Tuesday. We want people to know what's happening, and we'll respond to this.
So, City Councilwoman Ammon, since we have you on the line, and probably after you, someone from your opponent's campaign will call, why don't you say something about, so you know our topic is about black women, our topic is about the story about us as angry people, and us being able to tease apart fact from fiction. Can you talk about the impact that story of who we are has had on your growth and development, and any role it may have played in your decision to be a public figure?
I know I've gone over the years and really tried to address issues and really maintain a focus on the issue, not necessarily personally attacking any other person in that process, but really saying this is why this policy is adversely affecting my constituents. Unfortunately, because of stereotyping, some people will find that to be, oh, she's being angry. And I've had words hurled at me by other officials on the floor of the County Board Chambers or any other body, suggesting that because I am representing the constituency that elected me, that in some way I am representing some angry position. We believe wholeheartedly that all of the institutions for which our tax dollars go should also meet the needs of us as citizens of this community. And so we will always stand in that position. Regardless to the stereotype, we have to have advocates, just like those who are in the business community have advocates to advocate for their interests. We have to also do the same. And as a state representative candidate, we'll be advocating across both communities, not just for business communities, but for people trying to improve their lives. They are also important in the discussion. And people should not be angered by the way we say it. They should actually be angered by the inequity that the system produces.
Well, I would agree with that. And further, I think it's okay for me to say one of the reasons I admire your campaign is that it's been so incredibly diverse that there is something special that a homegrown black woman can bring to not just the black community, but to everybody. And there's also something quite interesting and valuable that a working class person can take to Springfield with them. Because this wouldn't just be about you becoming the first black person elected to this position. I think more importantly, this may be about you being a working class, pro-union person that Springfield hasn't had on the floor. And so that, I think that's exciting a lot of people, certainly across race. Any comments about that?
Our campaign is extremely diverse. We have about 277 volunteers as of last week that walk every line that you could imagine in our society and in our community, from the PhD to the dropout, to the working class, to the more wealthy and well-to-do. We tried to make sure that this space was developed where all of us could come to the table, and even if we don't agree on the solution, at least we are willing to sit at the same table. And we wanted to make sure that there was room for the Asian, for the Latina and Latino, for the African American, for the Caucasian. Our campaign really represents our community. And that's what we've been trying to focus on from the very beginning, is to say that none, as the governor says, everyone in, no one left out.
Yeah.
I know that's a slogan, but it really means
It's
that
true.
must
Mhm.
represent our current campaign, and all the work we've done in the past has been to include, not to exclude.
Karen, any comments before we lose? Before we lose, Karen, I know how busy she
I know,
is.
no. It's just so great to hear the dialogue and to, believe in a bunch of different things that you represent, in terms of how it's aligned with policies, procedures, and practices, and the kinds of change that we want to see both locally and at the state level. So, I will say that the other thing that I have been aware of as I've watched the campaign, as we think about the topic at hand, that I've been so pleased at, is that you haven't fit into a stereotype. Mm-hmm. It's been very, you've transcended, and not transcended race, but transcended the box that so often African American politicians sort of get pigeonholed in, and that has been so powerful, I think, not only just for the whole political issue, but for young black women and people in the community sort of watching you, is that no matter what has happened, when we think about what we'd like to see, we want to see righteous indignation. We want to see righteous expressions of anger. We want to see people committed to justice, which is different than anger sort of run amok. And so what you've done is constantly be committed to justice and representing justice principles, and that's been a powerful testimony, I think, to anybody who's had a chance
and
to sort of observe
shows, that word diversity gets thrown around so much, but rarely do we get an opportunity to point out what it actually looks like.
Yes, that's right.
And Karen, that sounded like what you were saying to me, that this is what diversity looks like across race, age, economics, social position, geography. This is, and it also, it not only teaches people of other races how to be in the world with and work in common with black people, but it also models to black people what it looks like to, especially to work with white people. Because again, our topic is anger, and a lot of us are like really angry at white people in general, and so don't always know how to be with them in constructive ways, though I think we have a history of maybe trying harder than many of them do.
Or perceived as being angry. Cause
it's that, because we aren't really angry, but the
right.
perception is that. But in your campaign, real black people get to see and participate in what it looks like to work with people across race, and especially this geography thing. I mean, we in the serious Midwest cornfields of Illinois, where white folks are never supposed to want to vote for black folks, yet you wipe the floor up with your primary opponent. So that was kind of great.
And I think I really believe people want, when they say they want something different, it doesn't mean that they want something different in the same economic class that they're already in. Different is really different. And I just left the university speaking at the Bruce Nesbitt Center with a diverse group of students. And one of the young men stood up and asked me if I could describe myself in one way. What was different about me? And I said to him, if I had to put a sentence on myself, it would be, I am out of the box.
Yes.
Not in it.
Yes.
Because what we have to do is out of the box. We have brought in young people who was still needed a reminder how to put a belt around those hands.
Yeah.
And we brought them in so that they could see not only the campaign, but contribute to it and produce videos for us. And we paid these young men. Because if you give them an opportunity, I believe they will step up to it and they will do what they're supposed to do. And we produce 5 videos with these young men.
Oh, I love it.
So I'm excited about being out of the box, and I won't allow anybody to put me in it. And so in this case, we will respond, and we'll respond just the way we're supposed to, right? We are an organized campaign, and we will not deceive the people, and we won't allow you to do it. So if you're going to win, you better win with some integrity. But don't you dare come up here and try to mislead people the way you've done.
So you're going to be talking back, and what you want our audience to know is that at 3:30 you're holding a live press conference, at your offices on University Avenue that are between 4th and 5th Street at 407 East University Avenue. And besides that, you wanted to call in to make the case, the souls got to go to the polls.
That's what the soul's got to do, because the other thing that tells us, and we should respond to this, as Ferguson has given us demonstration, that anytime you want to change policies, it doesn't matter if you're mad. Don't be mad about it. Find a solution, organize around it, and then go and change that policy. And if that elected official does not listen to you, replace them.
That's right.
That is the power of the people, and if we activate it, we will always be able to make the changes we want to see. Complaining and whining and crying, don't do it. We have to organize, we have to respond, and unless they literally take the franchise, we better exercise it, because that's exactly how you get policies changed.
This is true. Well,
I'm gonna let you all go. I love you.
we wish you well, love you
This
too,
afternoon at my office.
and we'll see you soon. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I want to remind any listeners who might be Republican or Green or Libertarian, you are so welcome to give us a call at 359-9227 and have your say. Right now, we're going to take a short break, but shoot, we're just getting started, so come right back.
Access Live can be heard every Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. on WBCP 1580 AM in Champaign-Urbana. You can learn more about the Access Initiative by visiting their website at www.access-initiative2.org.
And we're back. This is Access Live, a community education and engagement initiative of the Access Initiative. This is your host, Imani Bazzell, here every week, once again trying to convince you to embrace our mental health and well-being. We have got to destigmatize mental health and mental health issues. There's a wide gamut of what that means, and to help us talk about that today, specifically as it relates to how anger might manifest itself in the lives of Black women, is Miss Karen Crawford Sims. She is the wraparound coordinator for the Access Initiative and is also responsible for their training and technical assistance. Welcome back, Ms. Karen.
So during the break,
Yeah.
right, we were sort of going back to try to figure out, try to connect the dots, and I was saying, let's talk about justice some more, because I think anytime, right, we're talking about the history of voting, and I think that the images of Black women, which we wanted to talk about, are grounded in a history.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably really great to remind folks about that history. Just most people probably know.
It's just that we've
Right.
had to fight.
Absolutely. Or there's been, racist and sexist forces that have who created a caricature
So
about
everybody knows what a caricature is, right?
about an angry Black woman.
Right, almost a cartoon character. The thing that we want to remember about stereotypes, caricatures, is that they represent a one-dimensional person.
That's right.
Or they say that a whole group of people are simply one-dimensional. And what we want to say as Black women for ourselves and on behalf of our girls and our broader community is that we way more complex than that.
Absolutely.
We are happy and joyous and excited and serious and have consternation and like to tell jokes and like to tell people off and everything in between. We all that and a bag of chips. So just to pick up on and contort, not just to pick up on our anger, but to contort it and twist it into a person who really couldn't even exist, is what we're trying to talk about today.
Just a couple things.
Yeah.
Actually, three things. One is hopefully most people know that the caricature actually got formed within a context. So, so everything exists for a reason. So when we think about systems and power, the angry black woman actually got formed as a juxtaposition to a white woman who was seen as fragile and docile
genteel,
and beautiful. And so this sort of image of this powerful, aggressive, superhuman, none-feeling, beast-like person got created, juxtaposed this other image. And I think that people constantly, so that image is oppressive to white women.
Yes.
It's oppressive to black women.
Now, let's stop there, because say how that's oppressive to white women. Because some people think, well, if you're the belle of the ball, you should just be happy. But what do you have to give up to be the belle of the ball?
So the full range of experiences, emotions, feelings. So you can't be fully
then they
human,
can't be
right?
Then they can't be angry.
You can't be angry. You can't have any of the.
No.
You can't even be disappointed, which is considered on that continuum of anger. So you're allowed limited feelings. And so, there's lots of poetry about this, about being flat, right?
Yeah.
And about being disconnected and not having access to a
You
full
exist
range
to please
these other people. And you can't have full access to your own emotional range of experiences. So just like it's oppressive to be flat, or to be non-existent, it's oppressive for people to only seeing you as one-dimensional, where you're only got anger. You don't have vulnerability or weakness or sadness or joy or any of those other tender emotions.
Yes.
We only get the sort of hard negative ones.
Yeah, so that gender construct in the world of patriarchy, which
Absolutely.
means a society organized around the interests of men, women of all colors suffer from those gender stereotypes, even though they may be different stereotypes, because the problem with a stereotype is that it is simplistic and uncritical.
That's right.
And the other piece of these gender stereotypes is, guess what? Men get hurt by them too.
Absolutely.
How do men get hurt by masculinity stereotypes?
Right. That's the short one. That's next week's
show, by the way. But we're just going to
show.
tease you about it right now.
So a couple of different ways, but I want to go and say one more thing about the gendered stereotype.
Okay, wait. You said you had 3 things.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So
opposite of genteel.
Opposite of genteel. There is colorism connected to it.
Yes.
So lots of colorism connected to the angry black woman. She looks a certain way.
Okay, brace yourself, everybody who looks like me. Okay, Karen, go ahead and say what colorism is.
And I will tell you. So I'm going to do something. First of all, I'm realizing, having worked doing part-time in cosmetics, colorism. I don't think I was aware of how it impacts the diaspora.
Yes.
We think it's just a black thing. It is an
just an African American thing. No,
it's
big.
It's big. Every time, I'm amazed at no matter how, if you've got pigment, you're probably impacted by colorism.
So for instance, people who are white, meaning from Europe, those from Southern Europe, aren't considered as beautiful, as smart, as engaging, as inventive,
or as feminine.
That's right, as those from Northern Europe.
That's right.
Right. So the Swede is who they should all be.
That's right.
Because if a woman is supposed to be feminine, but what do we think about Portuguese women, Greek women, Italian women? They talk loud. They talk with their hands. They like to eat a lot.
They're
We don't
bossy,
think of them as skinny. They're
mean-spirited,
bossy.
they're fussy.
That's kind of the stuff they say about us.
Interesting.
So this colorism piece. But in the context of the black world, we use that term colorism.
To talk about pigment. So the lighter you are, so in some ways, the more evidence there was about cross-cultural contamination.
Yes.
Cross-cultural contamination.
Seriously. And some light-skinned people might have a concern about that. But let me say, as a light-skinned, curly-headed sister, I'm not offended by the use of that at all. So
Sorry.
Move forward.
So the more evidence there is of that, then the more supposedly you are, the more people say that you're more affiliated with things that are white. The less you are, more people assume
meaning you get privileges.
that are white privileges.
Yes.
And so on the other end, people assume that the darker you are, the less privileged you are, and the more beast-like, the more
Yes.
slave-like, the more plant field worker like you are, which supposedly means that you don't get any privileges.
Right.
Now, of course, we're smart enough, hopefully.
We know better
We're smart
than
enough
that.
to know that all of those are stereotypes. But I think when it comes to black women, if you look at media images
We still buy
so
it.
over and over again, people reinforce that and believe that over and over again. And
It's so
where
painful.
it impacts both. And the other thing I wanted to say about
Yeah.
that is not only is it racism and classism and colorism and sexism, but then we start to internalize it. And it impacts, when we think of, remember we were talking about community violence,
Yeah.
it impacts how people parent and how people see themselves and how they raise their children. And so if I believe that I'm only allowed two emotions,
Yeah.
right? I'm allowed to be angry and I'm allowed to maybe feel sad when somebody dies.
Right.
But those are the only two
Only
things.
two, angry and sad.
Angry and sad, and everything else sort of just goes, not unless I'm intoxicated under the influence.
Right.
Everything else I'm not allowed to feel. Then imagine me as a parent.
Oh, Lord. And imagine the damage that we then visit upon our children that was visited upon
That's right.
us.
And imagine me in relationships.
That's right.
And
how could you sustain a
That's
healthy
right.
relationship?
And friendships, right?
That's right. So that's what we mean when we talk about generational pain, generational violence, etc.
That's right. And internalized depression.
And internalized depression. So one of the ways that manifests itself is that black women who are brown and darker are told, which this is gross generalizations,
gross.
that they're ugly, not smart, etc., not desirable, etc., and black women who are tan, cafe au lait, etc., are supposed to be the ones who are desirable. Two things that I think it's important to say here. One, that's ridiculous. There are some really light-skinned people who are seriously not attractive at all.
And can I add a caveat too?
Would you?
You're desirable as a romantic interest.
Right, that was
Darker
my part
women
too.
are desirable
Right.
as sexual
That's
things.
right.
So
Exactly. That was my other point. Well, my other point was that it's still gendered. The underlying assumption is that as women, we want to be desirable. We want to be objects. The question is just darker sisters putting up with maybe men only wanting to interact with them in the dark, which is, I think, what I heard you say,
right.
when you just want to have sex and be bestial, but who you want to be seen with in public is someone who's quote-unquote fairer. That whole construct doesn't just play into our internalized racism, but it's deeply sexist. It's deeply, in fact, misogynist. Remind people what misogynist means.
it's just a hate of women.
It's just being a hater.
Just
That's
hating.
another way of thinking
Right.
about being a hater.
And really internalizing those beliefs and having and acting on them and really
Right.
And so even if you don't it's a strong dislike for women and all things that women represent. So
It really
women,
is.
yeah.
And so you should think about colorism as a very anti-woman thing. Certainly light-skinned brothers and dark-skinned brothers, supposedly sisters like the light-skinned ones more. But boy, seemed to me ever since Wesley Snipes hit the scene, not only me, but pretty much everybody else was
And
like
Idris and right.
Idris and Denzel before
right,
that.
that's right.
I
So-
mean, I think that feels kind of old now, the idea that to go after the light-skinned brother. That it's not all the way gone, but it does feel old.
It does feel.
But that light-skinned, dark-skinned woman thing has been at the heart of so much of division between black women who under other circumstances could be so close.
That's right.
And I am blessed that I have always had black women of all shades who have been my super, super close friends and family. But sometimes our internalized oppression, meaning women who look like me, may think they can only make friends with other women who look like them. Not all, sometimes because they think they're better, they bought the lie.
That's right.
But sometimes because they're afraid brown and dark-skinned women are going to attack them and be angry with them and not open to a relationship. And sometimes, of course, you know, as old as I am, I've experienced it all. You never know when you look like me if somebody's trying to get next to you because you're like really smart, you know, and are a fun person to be with, or whether they're trying to get next to you because of what you look like. That's not a compliment.
That's right.
We don't want that. Don't try to get next to me because of the way I look. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. It's got to be about way more than that. And we really do have to see the fundamental beauty actually in all people. And I'm going to say this one thing that may sound weird, and I'm going to hand you the mic again. My television went out. And I recently bought a new TV, you know, a couple months ago. And you know how you can get the 780 DPI, 750, whatever it is, or you could get the 1080. I got the 1080 because it wasn't that much more expensive. I have been fascinated.
How different.
I have been really watching television because you can actually see so much more about the depth and complexity of complexion.
That's right.
And looking at, you know, why they say you either have a red undertone or a yellow undertone. I have just so much always wanted somebody next to me when I'm like noticing all this stuff. I've always known the rich diversity of what we look like, but actually seeing it in serious high definition, it's really quite fascinating.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, what's the third thing? Opposite of genteel colorism. Can you find it again? What was the third thing?
Well, probably the final thing that I already mentioned
reinforcing the caricature.
Reinforcing it, but I was thinking about in terms of what it manifests in terms of your own parenting and relationships and that kind of stuff. So I think, like, and linked to that, I think because we're talking about anger, and I just want people to sit with the full range of all of the things that, like, if you just hear all of the issues that people are up against or have, you know, like the whole range of racism, sexism, classism, patriarchy, all of that, just imagine living that every day. And then go back to that caricature, like if you go and search angry black woman and get an image of who shows up.
Mm-hmm. She's usually dark.
Can your heart think about what it's like to be that person who was impacted by all of these forces
have some mercy.
And probably not even conscious of the fact that all of these things are coming at her constantly.
Yes.
And how is it that you don't feel a little bit of anger?
Absolutely.
When you try to
and the question of a really bright person might be, how could they not be more angry?
That's right.
Y'all, we're going to take another break, but you can see it's heating up in here. So we'll be right back. Better not go anywhere. I'm watching you.
Access Live can be heard every Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. on WBCP 1580 AM in Champaign-Urbana. You can learn more about the Access Initiative by visiting their website at www.access-initiative2.org.
And we're back one more time. You're listening to Access Live, a community education and engagement initiative of the Access Initiative. I'm your host, Imani Bazzell, and today we are unpacking Black anger, Black rage, and in particular, this is the first in a series of shows on Black anger, specifically today on Black women and girls' anger, the stereotypes about who we are and where these stories came from, as well as the truth about our life that says we might actually have some righteous indignation. And over the break, we were talking about, let me remind you, in the studio I have Miss Karen Crawford Sims, who is the Access Initiative coordinator of wraparound services and also responsible for training and technical assistance, and also has a background in counseling and therapy, and in particular in marriage and family counseling. So she is in her element right now. And for those of you who are as old as me, you remember Millie Jackson, don't you? And of course, she's still around. But Karen was conjuring up that image of Millie Jackson and all that means. If y'all don't know who Millie Jackson is, just go look it up, because we only got a few minutes. But Karen, you also mentioned then who you think you named her heir apparent.
Yeah.
So say something about that.
So there's a younger artist. Her name is Kay Michelle. And so young folks probably know her because she's on like reality shows like Love and Hip Hop, but she's a pretty popular artist right now. And I was just saying that I was looking at, she has a new video out, and I was reading the comments and how heartbreaking it always is that, you know, first of all, I was saying she has a song called Love 'Em All, and all of the comments were about how she was a thought. Hopefully everybody knows what a thought is, or all kinds of other things. Like, they were so dismissive of who she was, and what she was saying was,
girl, say the word. They call her a whore and everything else.
Well, the kids say a thought now, which is even, to me, worse than that's even worse, that you were just a moment. But what I was saying was
what
that
an indignity,
right? That you were,
you ain't worth nothing but a moment.
You were a thought. So, but what the song was about was that the way that she expresses her vulnerability is that she enters relationship after relationship after relationship. Open-hearted, right? And then she keeps moving on. And everybody was like, you're not doing that. That all you could be doing is being an S word, being something else. And I was wondering, like, how often it is as women or as people, we reinforce each other's pains, because she gets characterized as an angry black woman, and she admits that she's angry because she's had this really horrendous trauma history, and what it would be like for her to have a safe space
to express
enter
that.
Open heart, right? Like, so here you go, you release a song that's an open heart song, and people don't go, oh, I see your pain.
Yes.
They go, oh, I see your vulnerability.
Oh, I see you're a slut.
Right, and so how, and that only reinforces you're angry. You know that you're angry,
right?
And so
right. and they won't let us see again. That's simplistic and uncritical.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So say something about the complex young woman she actually is.
So I was just telling you over the break. So she had a really difficult childhood. So that is indeed true. Abusive home, growing up, she was sexually assaulted, right? It's a common narrative. But she
was no good.
Told she was no good, but she's also a graduate from an HBCU.
HBCU,
right? With a music major, at the top, like, and work like in did legitimate musical stuff well before she became
actually a professional.
That's right, and a well-educated, graduated professional. So not what you would think. So given her trauma narrative, she's overcome, but even in the overcoming, she doesn't get a chance to be vulnerable in any space, right? Isn't that scary?
That's right. And what we said about this series, remember we're doing a series, not only several shows on anger, but hang with us now. We're going to then progress to forgiveness.
Yeah.
And then we're even going to go further and progress to joy and happiness.
That's right.
Oh my God. Is it possible to imagine African American people can be and deserve joy and happiness? Not silliness, of which we deserve that too, not the step and fetch a thing, not the very narrow band of comedy that's all about bitches and hoes and pimps and all of that, but real, authentic joy and happiness. Do we believe that could be for us? So we talking about all this anger stuff right now because it's real, but we're on a train.
Yeah.
We're moving towards who we really want to be able to be, our full, complex selves, capable of joy and happiness. Because right now, we ain't all even capable of experiencing joy and happiness.
Which leads me right to go back to thinking about, and I don't know why we didn't start here, which is the logical place.
This is just the beginning.
Right. My brain goes, we were talking about the quote, if the one that you used, if one woman told the truth about their lives, the whole world would split open. And I think if you think about the black woman story, every black woman story, your mama, your sister, your neighbor, your whatever, and I'm going to use this word broadly,
yes.
the traumas,
yes.
the losses,
That's
the pains,
right.
and then also the lack of support. Because, so often this is all happening without the village and without
That's
the
right.
support
without
and
the
without
real
the resources.
And told you don't need the support
That's
because
right.
you're a strong black woman.
That's right. And without the resources and the whatever, of course you start to toughen up. And people told you probably you were toughen up. And any of us who were ever corporal punishment was utilized with us as a method of punishment.
Because that's all that would work.
That would work. We were told, right, stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry
That's
about.
right.
Or it didn't hurt that bad.
That's
Or
right.
and so
you stop crying right now.
Right, or it didn't hurt that bad.
Right. Until you learn how not to cry.
Right, that's right. And so if you think about a black woman's story, and what it would take for her to be something different than, because the anger has meaning. And I would love for, people are talking about this. Iana did a really powerful series on this, but it would be powerful for people to want to know the next time you project that a woman is angry with you, what do you think she needs?
Right.
Right.
Woo! Y'all, let's say that again. That's so deep.
So to be thinking, what does she need?
Which is a trauma-informed practice.
That's right.
Because what do you do in a therapeutic situation that's informed by trauma and justice? What's that first question?
You ask, not what happened.
What happened?
Yeah, you ask what happened to you.
What happened
not
to
what's
you.
wrong
Not
with you.
what's wrong with you.
That's right.
Right? What happened to you? That feels like a bomb to me. I went to therapy once. My God, this had to be easily 25 years ago. I'm like, okay, I'll try it, right? And I was told that I could go over to Parkland because I was in the district and, so I could go there. So I'm like, okay, hold your breath, just try it. We'll just, maybe, we'll just get some pointers or you'll get something out or whatever. So this woman counselor says, oh, just, tell me what brought you here. Just be honest. Just, I just want to listen deeply. Just tell me what's on your mind. Honey, I decided I was going to be vulnerable and just be honest, right? Do you know that at some point she stopped me and she said, probably because we were working with the 50-minute hour or whatever, she said the very thing to me that would absolutely, positively ensure I would never go back.
Really?
You know what she said? She said, whew, I'm exhausted.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't.
That said, everything I had been told would happen if I ever told the truth about my life. That it was too heavy. It was too much. No one would be able to handle it. That I've got to manage this on my own. And here's this person with a degree, multiple degrees, who says out of her mouth, tell me the truth, you can be vulnerable with me. And her first response is she's exhausted.
Wow. I am so sorry.
As a therapist, you want to apologize for all therapists, right?
And as a woman, right? Because And
She
of course,
said
you get
she
you know,
was
it's like that whole like
exhausted.
it's another callus. So here you are,
Ugh.
right? You taking care, got a pedicure, and then all of a sudden somebody puts you in another pair of tight shoes that rubs and rubs and rubs, and you get hurt all over again.
She said,
I am so
"Whew,
sorry.
I'm exhausted." Well, she made sure I would never go back to therapy.
That's right.
And the very thing we need to do is to be able to create safe spaces where we can be vulnerable so we can unload and unpack unnecessary burdens.
That's right.
If we're ever going to get to the other end of the joy and happiness spectrum, we're gonna have to risk vulnerability.
Absolutely.
We only have a few minutes, so I want to give you the mic to introduce the idea of vulnerability that we're gonna carry through this episode. I know it's just a small question.
Oh, just a small question. All right. So I don't know if people are familiar with, and we're going to send out some information
So
about Black
look at the
women and anger.
website. Y'all gonna get some homework and everything.
And worksheets and a whole bunch of stuff. So, but Brene Brown had started she's a researcher who's done a whole lot of work on vulnerability, and nobody's seen her TED Talk. Check it out. It's a really amazing
We'll
thing.
have the link on the site.
Yeah, but however, what she talks about is when you unpack, when you get to the heart of things, when you want to live fearlessly, when you want to have intimate, great relationships, when you want to live heart open and joyful, you got to be willing to sort of unpack yourself. You got to be willing to be naked in some ways. And for folks who are hurt, who are calloused, for lots of legitimate racist,
been
sexist,
traumatized.
colorism, internalized
that.
messages, and parenting. So,
Okay.
right, all of those kind of forces, it's hard to open your heart up.
I was told I was mean as a child. Could you believe me being described as mean?
No, I can't. But I can imagine.
But you can.
But because I know a little bit about your story, I can imagine that as a way to kind of navigate the world. So vulnerability. How do you live heart open? And so, a couple things.
Yes.
Homework this
Boom.
week,
Homework.
right? So we're going to send some links out. But the next time you are looking at and trying to judge another woman this week, I want you to think, I wonder what she needs.
Y'all hear that? One more time. Your homework. If you don't go to the website and look up any of this stuff, which you better not let me find out you didn't do, but just in case you get past me, your one homework assignment is this.
To look at another woman and wonder, I wonder what she needs. And if you have the relationship, then to reach out and ask her.
She might break down and cry. We don't know. But for now, we hope you've enjoyed the show. We hope the reason we didn't get more calls was because you all were just pinned down to the radio or the internet and couldn't move. But stick with us these next few weeks. This show is about the mental health and wellness of African American people, and we get into the heart of the subject. So until next week, keep holding hands.
Thank you for listening to Access Live. Access Initiative is a trauma and justice-informed system of care. We're glad that you joined us today. Please join us every Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. for Access Live. Thank you and be well.